Hello. Um, I am decided to do this video in a different room because there's more privacy, and um, and this topic requires privacy if I'm going to be, um, completely informative. I guess is the word, so that it might be helpful if I'm not able to be open or feel like I can be open, then it's not going to be much help to anybody who might be experiencing the same thing. So, first, I just, excuse me. First, I just want to mention that I'm having a little bit of a wave of anxiety right now. Um, I just took my nighttime meds, so hopefully that will relieve it. But I was really shaky and anxious. Um, this always happens at a holiday, especially this holiday time, because. Oh, hold on, dog just let himself in. Okay, so, and it's not the holiday. I mean, yeah, that's stressful. I consider that to be stressful, but not anxiety. Um, the what happens with the anxiety at you have Christmas and Christmas Eve, Thanksgiving and New Year's, and they're all in a big cluster. And wherever I have worked in my life, part time even, um, tend to have a little more time off. Things seem to see usually quieter, um, less intense. For example, dog training, and including with the weather, I got a whole week off from training dogs. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be thrown right back into the midst of, doing two dogs a day um, on weekdays. So that's where the anxiety is. Going back to work. I'm better if it's the same, if there is no break. I do better if it stays the same. I like having time off, but the more time I have off, the more anxiety I have about going back. And sometimes I have clients, because I advertise that I'm flexible with scheduling. They don't have to go to a class at a set time. If they miss it, they miss out on the information. I go to them. And if they need to cancel or reschedule, I don't like doing that because it messes up the dog training a little bit. You need that flow, get in the move, and the people tend to get lazy if they aren't pressured a little bit. So, and okay, I'm getting way off, but that's why I'm feeling kind of jittery. So if I take some deep breaths like that, that's what that is. I'm not anxious about what I'm talking about. So in a video, I have done videos on intrusive thoughts more than once, but I did one just a few ago, and I am emphasizing that this phenomena occurs for me only when I am in mania and mixed episode. Outside of a shift of mood or depression, it does not exist. Therefore, I do not consider myself to have obsessive compulsive disorder. Although the same symptoms exist, but as soon as my mood normals out, or when I hit depression, the intrusive, obsessive intrusive thoughts uh, disappear, dissipate, depends. Um, and when it's hypomania, I might get a taste, a little tingled on my spine, but it doesn't unfold to the degree that when I am in true mania, which I tend to go mania mixed depression. Um, Back in the day, before I was on lithium, because they didn't have lithobid yet and I couldn't take regular lithium, and Seroquel wasn't out yet, I would have very long mood episodes. I would have very long, I would, like, my hypomania would take a couple months and I'd max into mania for a few months. So I was flying high, and then I would hit the mixed, and I was nothing but miserable, absolutely miserable. I mean, and that's when I was at my most dangerous. And then mixed usually didn't was usually a matter of weeks. And then one day I would open my eyes and I couldn't move. So, and I didn't have a single thought in my head. So, part of me was relieved that the torture was over. And so the intrusive thoughts easing into mania, the unwanted, unasked for, doing something innocent, reading something, watching something, and it would just get stuck. And and next thing I know, I'm plagued by violent sexual thoughts, and I talked about tapping my head to make them go. Um, in obsessive compulsive disorder, the obsessive part is the part that makes you feel the most tension. Um, so let's think about someone who has a germ phobia. Um, they usually have thoughts of getting sick. So he can open the door too. He can come and go as he pleases because it's designed that way. He's supposed to be able to get in here. Um, Let me shut the door. Okay, um, so they might start out thinking, "Oh, that's dirty. Wipe that up. It's kind of dirty. Wipe that off." And um, but it's not just them looking at a surface and seeing little germs moving around. It's usually thoughts of getting sick from the germs. And so I don't know this, but I'm guessing they have thoughts that they don't want plaguing them about getting sick or somebody else getting sick um, from these germs. So, what's going to make it feel better? There's the compulsion. I'm going to wash my hands, and the tension goes away. Okay, so, but then here comes oh my God, that's dirty. I touched it. I felt better after I washed my hands last time. I'm going to go do it again. Oh, that relieved it. But it's never enough. It always asks for more. Intrusive, obsessive thoughts always ask for more when it comes to the compulsion. It just always escalates. It's not next thing you know, you have to clean off the sink, then wash your hands, and then you realize the sink must be dirty again. And you get into this cycle. People can be washing a sink and washing their hands in the whole bathroom, and it just extends itself for hours. It's like crippling. So, this is what I was going through, but like I said, only during Mania and mixed episodes. My compulsion that relieved the tension of having these violent, unwanted thoughts that made me feel gross and disgusting would be whoever I was, the focus, the person, the focus, information collecting. So if it were a real person, like a coworker, let's say, I would like suddenly get the idea somehow that, well, I can find out where they live and what their home phone number is by looking in the phone book, because this was back in the day. And I have to be able to calm down to go to work. I was a nurse then. I have to calm down. I have no choice but to do this. And so I'm like ironing and trying to fight with myself not to do it. And I'm ironing my uniform. And finally, I'm like, just before I leave, just let me do it before I leave so I can calm down. And I would look it up. It's like, you're not going to do anything with the information. You're just looking. Okay? And now, like I said, it never ends. It always wants more. And so I would then move to, well, I have their address. This is before Google Maps now. And so I got a map and looked on the map at where they lived. And like that might be a few days later. And I could use that for maybe 5 days, maybe. But how often I did it increased, and then it just wasn't enough anymore. And so I'm like, well, I could call and just hang up before the answer. I could just call and hang up. And so before cell phones, I'm thinking this was in the 90s. Yeah, 90s, because it was before I was, I think this was before I was, after I was diagnosed? I don't remember. Anyway, 90s, early 2000s. And so then the next thing would, be somebody answer and hang up. But then her husband answered, and that freaked me out for some reason. And so, and then I realized, I wouldn't want anyone to know it was me. And this one time, I was at work, and she wasn't there. And so I did the call and hang up from work. It was like getting a fix. But mind you, I was manic. I was like racing and high and euphoric. And every time I did one of these things, I not only felt less tension, I felt more euphoria. And it only made me think worse thoughts. And so, I mean, this would just escalate until it was stopped by my own body's chemistry. I was at like, one time I called from work and found out she had like caller ID and or got caller ID. So she called it right back and was like, someone called me from work from here. I'm like, no, I didn't, and I don't know who did. And it was kind of really lame on my part. So I'm like, can't do that anymore. Um, Later, with a different focus and a different uh, mania depressive episode, it was someone on TV. And so I would watch a movie or part of a movie over and over and over. There was this one time where I went, shh, we're supposed to go do something, so I'm going to pause this and go do that thing because he's trying not to let me stop until I've done it. So I'll pick up when we get back. I hope it doesn't just stop altogether. Because I find it fascinating. Terrifying, but fascinating. I mean, it was a whole different episode, and it's a new person every time. I haven't had it happen in many, many, many years, but I went to see this one movie that was the trigger, but it made me feel euphoric. It was like getting a fix of dope. And I also had the racing, obsessive, intrusive thoughts going and going and going and going. And I saw this movie. I didn't know this till later. Somebody else told me. I went to see this movie 25 times in 2 weeks. I can't tell you. I'll count and let you know when I come back how many different episodes had different, it was always one person. And so basically, I was a little bit of I was more than a little bit. There were times where I was just a flat out stalker. Oh, he's going to go under the bed and wait. Good. I was never caught, but I would have been deemed, if I were caught, and anyone that knew anything about mental health probably would have figured out that there was something wrong with me. I don't know, but technically I, had a couple instances where I was just a flat out stalker. I'm a little ashamed of that, but there was nothing I could do about it because I would try to get by on just a little bit and just going out of my way to run into somebody and saying hi, but at the same time having these horrible thoughts about them. So it's just a really bizarre thing. Excuse me. Until, gosh, I remember the first inklings or when I was 12 and I read the book Little Women. And I found myself rereading certain chapters and then it was narrowed down to certain paragraphs. And then there was one where in nursing school, which was really bad because in nursing school, you don't get much sleep. Your hours are totally whacked. you have to get up really early to do your clinical. Now they have evening clinicals and stuff. They didn't have that when I had to be downstairs to talk over my patient by 7 a.m. So I was getting up at 5 or 6 a.m. And then have a day on the floor and then do after your day on the floor, a little powwow after that. And I would work. Sometimes I would, the work I like to do was when you would sit with someone one on one in the summer and stuff, but, or weekends to earn a little money, but I always did nights, so my sleep was messed up. Unbeknownst to me, I had bipolar disorder and I didn't know it. And I was completely insane during that time. How I managed to function and get the good grades that I did, I don't know how. I guess I was manic enough and but coherent enough to do it. And but this is where it really got scary this time, this earlier time, was because we would drive, I say, is because I would talk friends into pulling a prank and stealing a, what did we call them? Not professor, not teacher, instructor, steal their trash. Now, I was presenting it as a prank to them, but I wanted more information. I just, somehow my head came up with, if you get in somebody's trash, you can learn a lot about them. And so we did that on two different times, two different focuses. I was really good at convincing people to do stuff with me. It was weird. They had no clue that I was, scary stalker person. In my last year, I did have a group of instructors, 3 or 4, that wanted a meeting with me, and they all expressed concern for my mental health or something. So I guess I must have been giving off crazy waves, And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I feel great. My grades are great. I'm about to graduate. Just relax. I'm fine. The schedule's kind of crazy, but, I'm fine. And that's all it came out to. And we got caught once by someone called the police and we got stopped. That's how weird it was. That's how extreme it got. They didn't know that I was doing it because I needed to stop these thoughts because I couldn't sleep. And they were just getting worse and faster and more intense and more awful. And I could only relieve them by doing the compulsion of gathering information. Would only give relief or finally move into the depression. Now, what happened when I would hit the mixed episode is it would go, instead of being euphoric and exciting, I'm feeling horrible about thinking these thoughts, and yet at the same time I'm feeling euphoric because I'm manic. It can happen because I've been there for months at a time. Um, Shame and euphoria. Who would have thought they were that closely related? Um, let's see. Um, okay, so when I would hit the mixed episode, it would get dark. That's when I started. That's when there was like a devil on my shoulder saying, "You are a sick, perverted, awful, disgusting person that belongs in hell. You must be from hell. You must be a demon from hell." And I was starting to believe this. And I didn't sleep for 2 weeks this one time. Not a wink. Nothing. Walking around all day and night, which is torturous, torturous thought process and more negative. And I just needed them to stop. And that's when I got suicidal, is because it was the only way I could think of to make them stop. I didn't want to do the things I felt I needed to do. Um, and so it, and so here's the part that should scare you is during this one episode while I was in the mixed part, I thought, because this time my target focus was someone in movies and TV, and in a way I felt like it might be her fault for choosing, for being in the roles that she was in. I don't know. But my brain thought I wouldn't be having this problem right now if she did not exist. And I don't want to say that I was planning, but it helped me feel better to think about how I could stop this and how I could make her not exist so I can stop feeling this way. You know, and I'm like, well, I know she lives in California. Uh, Gosh, if I could just somehow make it so that she doesn't exist, then I wouldn't have to feel this way anymore and it would end. So, luckily, it, it happened that um, I'm pretty sure that was the one where that's where I was diagnosed. I had a box of stuff I had accumulated. I had videotaped VCR, back then, movies. I had books. I had all this stuff that in this box that I had collected. And so that's when I went to my doctor. Uh, but you can imagine, and like, I went to my doctor before I hit the depression because I told her, my regular doctor, and I didn't know it was bipolar disorder. I was in my 20s, and I went to my doctor and I said, I can't sit still. I can't stop talking. I can't get to sleep. And just like, has anyone ever mentioned bipolar to you? I'm like, no, but now that you say it, it really makes sense. And at first, I was diagnosed too because I was working at the time. I was sort of functioning. It wasn't long before it went to bipolar 1 disorder. Um, but I hit the depression and went completely blank and couldn't move. And I was actually, um, I couldn't feel anything. I was really devoid of emotion, but I did realize that the thoughts were gone and the compulsion part was gone. So that was good. But I can't work. I was like flip flopping between catatonia and massive waves of anxiety. It's like not panic attacks. I don't have panic attacks much. I just get this anxiety that is just me. It's just this very, I don't know. It's very unpleasant, but not panic attacks. Anyway, um, so as soon as I was Lithobig came around, excuse me, I started taking that. That helped decrease the intensity and extreme. Is extremeness a word? How extreme the mood shifts were. I still have them, um, the whole gamut, but the whole episode tends to be much shorter and much less extreme. And and then when Seroquel was added because of the psychotic features I was displaying, thought processes, it turned out that apparently I'm very good at masking how bad I am. And so things have to get quite dire before someone notices. So I tell people I live with my mom because we just have, it's better with two incomes, it's a big house, and blah, blah, blah. But there is the necessity of there needing to be another person just in case that knows my disorder and red flags. And that if you just heard what I was talking about, that could be dangerous. I had one one mania up where I had false memories about someone from my past, and I part of that story came to be this was not true. This is my mind made it up that we had a suicide pact and she killed herself in front of me and I didn't follow up and if my part of the bargain. And if I would just do that, she would be waiting for me on the other side and I'd be happy. And at that time where my mom was married and I lived there, he had guns in the house. So I was ready to shoot myself because I wanted to be happy. And it's not the first time that I've associated happiness and suicide. So, um, so now after Seroquel, the bizarreness of everything is way less. Um, I, like I said, because my moods are not that extreme, I don't have this phenomena anymore of the intrusive, obsessive, compulsive that it doesn't. Um, I'm a perfectionist, but I'm not OCD, and I wouldn't apply that to me, except unless I don't know if there is a phrase for when one disorder only exists within another disorder. Um, I I don't know. If anybody knows that, please let me know. Uh, but this has been a very frank and honest um, description of what I have gone through and what I hope to never experience again. And I wanted to do it because if there's anybody out there that's even remotely having this kind of issue, I would, I just would want, if I were that person, to know that somebody else is experiencing these, um, experiencing this or anything like this during their episodes. And, um, and that it doesn't, if you're having bad thoughts, you're not a bad person. You might have a pretty sucky um, disorder, but um, it is important to tell your doctor, um, in the least, to say, I have these thoughts, they come into my head, they're disturbing to me. Um, I fight them, and that just makes it worse. And I find if I do this, I feel better, but it only happens when I'm manic. Just the facts, just the straight facts. You don't have to get into what those thoughts are, or, as long as you can assure them, I'm not going to hurt him. I'm not thinking about hurting myself or anybody. Unless that's true, then you definitely should say something. But I just would like a person to know that there's somebody else that has experienced that same thing, that same torture, lived and gotten through to the other side. Um, and become not a bad person, not a horrible person, not someone who's going to be marked for the rest of their life by thoughts and things. So, um, if you are going through this like I did, my heart goes out to you because I know how hard and painful and desperate it can feel. So, so there is that. I'm going to go now. I hope you all had a happy holidays. Mine was quiet and good. I'm just trying to get myself ready for the rest of the coming year. Okay, so I'll be talking to you guys later.